Hi, Abby. I wanted to leave you some feedback on Essay 1. Um, I think that you have the makings for a really good narrative here. In that there was this tension in your life, and the tension was like tension in more than one place, right? So you kind of had like the social tension with some issues going on in high school, and then you also had this tension of just kind of naturally understanding that Aurora and Mount Vernon, that this rivalry exists, but through that rivalry you're able to form really important relationships. So I think that makes for a really interesting story, and I think that it's one that a lot of people would relate to. So here's one thing that I'd like you to work on, if you want to revise this. I think that you have enough content here and a strong enough theme and purpose to make this a really good essay. I do think another round of revision, primarily focusing on editing out unnecessary repetition, and thinking about the progression of your ideas, or the progression of the ideas explored in your paragraphing, will help this out quite a bit. So you present this kind of cool opening sentence here: the two rivals collided. So that is such a interesting idea that I want to know more, because we're automatically getting that tension that we want from a story that'll drive us in right away. But then you present a idea that is the complete opposite of the opening idea. So these kind of feel like two very different introductory sentences that don't quite work together. And quite honestly, this is the one that's far more interesting. So you kind of get back to the idea of rivalry here, but you explain it much better when you're talking about, gosh, it was deep here in the essay, right? Like all in here about the background information about your mom and the big football game and all that stuff. I think that this is the detail that needs to be up here to help understand how the two rivals collided. So, and you mean that in more than one way, right? You mean it that like it's literally you Aurora members, or Aurora and Mount Vernon coming together in this big football game, but it's also you and your boyfriend, but also this friendship that forms. So I think if you could explain what the rivalry is more clearly up here, it would it would it would be more effective. I like the details that you have in here about like the way that the dog food plant smells. Although Microsoft isn't happy with your word choice here, and I kind of agree with it. I think maybe the town were the unbearable dog food plant, but then actually that alone won't work, because it's not the plant that fills the streets. I assume it's the smell, and that's the one thing that you're missing from this sentence. That kind of messes with your clarity. One of the things that I want you to pay attention to is focusing on one main idea per paragraph. So let me give you an example. You start off by introducing Aurora. You name it the drama town, but you also say that you love it, and then you also say that your life was pretty easy growing up, even though you're dreading high school. So those are a lot of like different competing ideas that I think would be more effective if you address them in all in their own paragraph. Because I don't really I like that you call it the drama town, but I don't really understand that until you kind of get down here and start talking about this like really negative experience that you had with this unnamed person. If you don't want to name her directly, that's okay. But this would be, we are going to understand this better with these ideas. Does that make sense? And painting the picture of how easy your life was in its own paragraph would be really nice for us to understand, because then think about that. You could transition to the idea that even though I had an easy life, in new paragraph, I was worried about high school, and I had a reason to be worried about high school because Aurora can kind of be a drama town, and then you can talk about what's happening here. Does that make sense? So you have like promising ideas all in here, but they're crammed together, and you don't really explore them until later. And at that point, it kind of feels like you're repeating yourself. So writers like the same information grouped in the same paragraph. This sentence, I think it would read better if you said senior year was. I see what you're doing here, but I think there could be a stronger way to say this. So you want to avoid ending sentences with prepositions if you can. So I would do some tweaking here. So maybe it's the idea of I couldn't wait for senior year, or senior year was the pinnacle moment, right, for me, something to that effect. And then I think that could lead us into this big moment, right? Because this is kind of like where your moment of change starts. And I think that if you hinted all of this up here in the introduction much sooner, this moment is going to be more exciting, because it's the idea that you are finally experiencing the Bell Bowl as a senior, as opposed to just a younger spectator who's waiting for her time to come, if that makes sense. So what I really want you to do is pay attention to the progression of your paragraphs. So I think re-outlining what you're doing in the individual paragraphs, and what I mean by that is in the margins say, I'm exploring this idea, this idea, this idea, and then making some choices. Do all those ideas need to be in that paragraph, or could they be shifted to another place in the paper? Would be really effective. And like I said, I think that you got a great theme. I love your opening line. So you've got enough to work with. It's just kind of shifting some ideas around so they're more effective. All right. Thanks for sharing this.